We're also keeping an eye on graft. The new graft exposes ahead of the president's speech. We also saw what happened back in 2015. In that State of the Nation address, President Uhuru Kenyatta sent about 5 of his cabinet secretaries. Will the same action be seen in today's head of the state, State of the Nation address, which is one of the key issues that Kenyans are hoping that President Uhuru Kenyatta will touch on?
Absolutely. We'll cross over to the counties as well to find out your expectations, but let's begin right there. State of the Nation address coming up. Daisy, what do you expect?
I expect many things. I expect the president to give the nation some kind of hope, because there's been a lot of negativity. There is also a lot of desperation among Kenyans. We have high unemployment rates. We have a food crisis. We have a health crisis. Actually, we have a multiplicity of crises in Kenya. So I hope that the president will use this opportunity to give a hopeful outlook, you know, and speak to us particularly about the things that many Kenyans are raising issues around. We know that corruption is high on his agenda. But while we have seen a lot of activity coming from the DCI and the DPP, you know, the offices that have been tasked with investigating and prosecuting corruption, we also expected to see a more open approach to government, you know, activity, government procurements and everything, but we're not seeing that. So we've seen that it has led to a lot of infighting among, you know, the ruling party. And so I think the president really needs to address himself to that, including some of these cloudy issues that people have raised questions around, you know,
Is the handshake one of the cloudy issues?
Well, the handshake, I think that people, the politics, you know, Kenyans, we love the politics around politics. I will say this, the handshake has been good insofar as it has given us stability and calm, okay? But it is important, I think, for the president to address his in-house issues. Because when we see that within the president's own party, there is so much resistance to that which has been embraced by wider people, the president has a responsibility to address that to his members. I think he needs to sit down with his party so that we don't have Jubilee operating like the Tower of Babel, because some of the people who are seriously opposed to this handshake are from within his house. So I think we need some more clarity on it, including some of the issues that are being bandied about. I noticed that, you know, there's been lower tempo around the whole referendum issue, the BBI, what is it about? Why the BBI? Why not Parliament? We have the people's representatives in Parliament. Why is the responsibility being undertaken by BBI and not the people's, you know, representatives? So there are all those issues. But for me, the issue around unemployment and debt, the president must address himself to the debt issue, because debt has been rising since the last term. And there are many things that Kenyans are not clear about. We hope that with this State of the Nation address, that the president will actually tell us about the debt management plan that his government
coming in. But before
you're talking about a third Eurobond. Remember, when the president had his roundtable with the journalists at the beginning or at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, he was asked a question by one of the journalists about the standard gauge railway and about our indebtedness to China. The president has been talking about Kenya having a healthy mix of debt, but the reality is that we don't have a healthy mix of debt. We are heavily indebted to China. We have seen what China have done in other countries. We are right to be concerned. The president assured that the SRG contract would be made public. It still hasn't been made public. We don't know how the debt is being managed in this country. He must address himself to that. We can't continue to measure growth in terms of GDP, looking at hardware. We've built roads, we have built, you know, standard gauge railway. People don't eat roads and standard gauge railway. We need to know how that is going to
just a bit. But first, Kevin, what do you expect?
Well, first and foremost, this is an expectation of His Excellency the President insofar as his function by the Constitution is concerned, Article 132. that says that every year the president is expected to issue a State of the Nation address, which is, of course, a semblance of what happens in other countries, particularly to mention the United States, where they also have a State of the Union. And 4 clear things that then the Constitution expects of the president, and that the first thing is that he's going to be able to share his agenda on national cohesion. So I expect issues of the Building Bridges initiative to come up. The second issue is, of course, how the government has been able to engage in international relations and our international obligations with other countries, where for me as a citizen, I expect to have engagements on, to hear engagements on especially debt crisis that we are in, questions and concerns around contracts that have not been openly put forward for the citizens to exercise their public sovereignty upon, so public participation issues. We have lots of documentation and documents that have been signed on behalf of the citizens of this great republic by the people who hold the power. But many times we have no idea what those documents are. So when you talk about a third Eurobond, the questions that then come up are, what happened with the first one to the first one to the second one? What is this? What is this about this third one? Of course, the third thing that I
part of the second.
Yes, the third thing which I expect His Excellency the President to be talking about is, Trevor, 54 years down the line, we have Kenyans dying because of drought management issues. We have hunger, and yet we have discussions around the Big Four. So what is this really about food security and the Big Four? What is the place of counties in the Big Four? What is the policy around functions of national and county governments against the Big Four? What is the president's plan on the rollout? And what is the place of the citizens in ensuring that the Big Four works for them? So. Of course, corruption is something that we cannot run away from, and I expect as a citizen to hear the president not just outlining what has been done, but when the big names that we are hearing about are going to be arrested. Not to say that the president is expected to arrest people, but I'm happy because institutions for quite some time we've been asking the place of ODPP, DCI, and all these others. And I'm happy that for almost the first time in Kenya, institutions are working, but then how can citizens be able to feel these institutions? Because corruption is theft of public resources, and when we have citizens complaining that resources and services are not being delivered, whereas resources are being stolen, then the question is, where is the moral authority to continue paying taxes?
Senator, just to take us back, in 2015, when the president was giving his address then, in 2015, he came and he had a list of 170 people who he mentioned were involved in graft cases. None of them were prosecuted. Some even made their way back into his government. And Daisy is just talking about how she would want to see hope, how Kenyans would want to be given hope by their leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Even as you give your expectations, are Kenyans supposed to still have hope, still supposed to have faith in President Uhuru Kenyatta?
At the risk of being branded not to be politically compliant, and because my fidelity is to the law, the Constitution, and the people have made that vote for me and Kenyans, I think I have a duty to tell Kenyans the truth and what I feel about how things are being run. And as she has just said, I have had the privilege of being in Parliament for quite some time. This is not the first or second address by the President that I will be listening to. But because she's so specific on the 2015 public address to the nation, I would not expect him to come in to bring anything much new, because as he has clearly put it, his address is guided by the Constitution and the issues that he must really try to report in terms of progress on what his government is doing. But if I remember, in 2015, when he mentioned his resolve to fight corruption and named people, I saw members of Parliament waking up and applauding him. I did not. Because at that time, I asked myself, how do you just come and tell people leave office without due process being followed? Because I don't rule out some aspects at times of each and especially when we are not in good terms with people. So I said I'll sit down and watch and see. But to date, and everybody will bear witness, as you're saying, out of those 174 people, how many have been prosecuted? Is 3 or 4 years? No, 4 years. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2019. Nobody. It is not about how many people you want to put in the headlines of newspapers as having been involved in corruption. To me, the most important thing is how many prosecutions, right, I have succeeded because due process has been followed. So there is so much hype about fighting corruption and everything else, which is good. At times there is something that you achieve because you scare people that may want to get involved in that corruption. But when I will stand up and tell Kenyans that we're in the right track of we succeeded, is that all the evidence that has been collected by the DCI and the EACC, and I must commend them from here, that I think Kinoti is doing a very good job. We must give him the support he's required. I am happy because the president was also giving him a lot of political goodwill in this fight. And I'm saying now, because the institutions are somehow now working, that are charged with the responsibility of the fight against corruption.
Right.
Let them be left to do their job, the judiciary, the EACC, and the others. But for today, because what Kenyans, I can tell you, expecting is for him to come and sack ministers or so, and so you also step aside. My friend, stepping aside does not sort out the Kenyan problem. Stepping aside what will sort out the Kenyan problems, and because I have had an opportunity personally to engage last week with the people of Samburu, because their governor is now in police custody, is how we deal with the post-stepping aside issues after one has left office. Because, for example, when immediately after 2015, because that list, even if you want to properly interrogate that list, there are people that were mentioned in that list who are sitting in his cabinet today. When you look in that list, there are people that are still serving government in different state offices. We've never had any report from any government institution that has cleared them. And to me, when you have been properly mentioned, you must be taken through a competent tribunal for you to get cleared. And that's why I love the position taken by Justice Ojwang, because systems, agencies, because of some certain pressure from different quarters, have continually or will continually be used to destroy the career of people because we are not in good terms. So I support the position taken, but I would want us to completely be adhere to the law and the constitution when we are really dealing with these issues, because the fact that you have mentioned does not rule out that, or does not take away your right to presumption of innocence until you are guilty. Proved guilty.
Tony, you're an economist. What would you want to see in his State of the Nation address?
Okay. My point will be that we see this State of the Nation address every year, more of a PR exercise. In terms of policy are not one-day statements. It's what your government does day to day to address issues. So we talk about unemployment. We haven't seen proper policies that come up in terms of addressing unemployment. You talk about debt. Treasury is in denial that we don't have a debt problem. So even if he talks about debt today, but Treasury will be conflicting him, saying we don't have a debt problem. I think there's a problem that we have in terms of direction as a policy if you're in government itself and you're the head of the executive. You talk about corruption, we have seen very little being done within the executive itself. Food security is a problem about a man-made problem. You have drought, which is a natural problem. You have famine that leads to starvation and death. That is poor policy from government, poor planning. So these are the things that when you talk about, we need to see day-to-day activities of government policy being run, addressing these issues. It's not a one-day statement.
All right. And on that note, we're taking a short break here on Daybreak. When we come back, we'll have a lot more and talk about those things one by one. We talk about corruption. What would you want to see? The president has the advantage of having more information than ourselves. So the issue is it an institutional breakdown, or who's fooling who and who's failing who? And we'll get into that discussion in just a bit. And also we'll cross over to Parliament, where the State of the Nation address will be happening. Waiga More is standing by there with his guest as well. See you in just a bit.